have chosen the way of the truth. Thy judgments have I laid before me. I have stuck to thy testimonies. O Lord, put me not to shame. I will run the way of thy commandments. When thou shalt enlarge my heart. Teach me, O Lord, the way of thy statutes, and I shall keep it unto the end. Give me understanding, and I shall keep thy law. Yea, I shall observe it with my whole heart. Make me to go in the path of thy commandments, for therein. Good morning, welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Continuing in the book of Psalms, of course, and I ended up missing a few this week. Tuesdays and Thursdays currently in my schedule are difficult mornings. So it's actually a difficult night. So it won't be surprising if that might happen again, especially Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you see, I'll try to make sure I schedule it the night before for either the next day. Just so that in case anyone happened to, I'm assuming most people just come when the notification comes and they're available to watch. But yeah. Let's see. So anyways, but that's not necessarily all the time, but lately it has been. Okay, I'm gonna itch up my nose, makes me want to sneeze. All right, hold on. Mute the mic. There we go. And we left off at verse 13. And the verses leading up to it talk about God's counsel stands forever. The thoughts of his heart to all generations. It's the immutability of absolute truth. That God's truth, the ultimate truth, his counsel stands forever. Now, smart, alecky types of people could use that to say, nothing changes. As far as in the Old Testament, they sacrificed animals, and now it's been replaced with the sacrifice of our Lord. You can say, well, is that his counsel didn't stand? No, it's the same thing, essentially, because ultimately it's about God's grace towards man. But his counsel, as far as our behavior, how we live our lives, right and wrong, in its essence, is unchanging. Maybe not necessarily like the laws of Israel as a state, and not necessarily the laws of us. And the law of Christ is not necessarily the same as the Old Testament law. But the basic right and wrong does not change. Meaning the things that are morally wrong, as opposed to customs, like the Hebrews had customs about the clothes they would wear. And the idea that God would be changing for him to demand the Gentiles live as the Jews do, like there's a question in the New Testament, that would not be God being the same necessarily. That's not God being the same as far as his counsel. If I think of his counsel as being, in terms of the heathen have certain counsel, right? It's not necessarily the thing that you might think. The heathen have counsel, he brings them to naught. They have devices. In the Lord's counsels stand forever. Meaning, if God says in a particular instance to do something, like if he says, think about in the history of Israel, and there'd be times when they would take counsel of the Lord, and the Lord would say, go and fight and do that, or go, or do not go forth into whatever situation you think you should go into. for your prosperity and future happiness. Whatever. It could be a war. It could be some other thing. Let's say God gives counsel. Is what you ought to do. And then men give different counsel. Counsel that is not the same as the Lord's. And that counsel is what God means, is he would bring their counsel to naught. And his counsel endures forever. Meaning that it's the right counsel. It's the right thing to do. When God counsels it, it's something that it stands forever, as far as it was right forever. And that those who do not take heed to God's counsels, but rather give heed to the counsels of men, when they're in opposition, obviously, will find themselves frustrated in their endeavors. All right, so blessed is the nation whose God is Lord, and whose people who he hath chosen for his own inheritance. It is a blessing to be chosen of God. And it's something people don't like to meditate on often. Because, it's easy to begin to mock people who think they are God's chosen, who think they are God's elect. Very often people see such people as, you think too much of yourself. You think God chose you. Well, the assumption is that, you think God chose you because you're special. That's how people think of it. And so when you talk about being God's elect, and also you think you're God's elect, therefore you think that justifies everything you do. This is why you will find hostility to that. Because some people I've seen exhibit both behaviors. I've seen people who think they're God's elect, and it makes them become arrogant, and believe that they think that whatever they do is justified by God because they are God's elect. And not that they think they do bad things and God justifies them. They just think that these things they're doing are good, even if they have negative effects on other people, because perhaps that is the condemnation of God coming through them. They're just preaching the gospel. And if people won't heed me, well, I'll shake the dust off my feet and God will destroy them because they're not listening to me, God's chosen. That's how people feel sometimes. And that can give people a sour taste in their mouth about what it means to be elect. And also, the other side where people think, now, why would you think God chose you? You think you're special. That, people think that because there are people who've exposed themselves as thinking far too much of themselves. And they talk about God in such a way that makes you think they're we can lay the blame for this personal, for the sense of their own personal worth, their overly generous sense of their own worth in the sight of God, and their own, let's call it their own merit for this, choosing. I mean, it's understandable because in human affairs, getting elected is a process where people choose the most worthy person, ideally, right? I mean, you may think, okay, we're in an election cycle now in 2020, and we think, okay, election, we want a worthy person. But you look at politics and you're like, okay, well, is that right, or is it just the person with the loudest megaphone or the person with the best media coverage? What is it that makes people get chosen? But ignore that and go back to maybe school times when people were picking teams, and when they pick teams, they pick them based on perception of their skill. So if you were picked last, you felt like it was because you were no good at the sport. And I remember getting picked last when I was a kid at certain times early on because I was very uncoordinated and tall and I wasn't a good player. Later on, I remember being passed over because they were all buddies. They picked their friends. And then there were times when I've been picked number one first. We want that guy. Later on, as my skills improved. And they chose me because they perceived that I would be skillful in the game we were about to play. So we are taught to expect that when you choose people, you choose them for good reasons, and it's based on their merit and their characteristics. It's not so with God. It's one of the things he said about Israel. It wasn't because you were a greater people or more numerous or anything. It was because I had pity on you. Because I made a promise to your father Abraham. I forgot exactly which. But you were the least of all nations. I chose to put my name upon you. There's not a just nation upon the earth, like a whole nation, where God's going to say, like, every person here is perfect, and this is my team. I'm going to choose them. But he chooses his inheritance based on his own personal thoughts. The Lord looks from heaven. He beholds all the sons of men. He sees all of us. From the place of his habitation, he looketh upon all the inhabitants of the earth. He sees everybody. He doesn't just see them, he perceives them. He sees them as what they are, for who they are. Deeply into their to the very basis of their existence. He fashioneth their hearts alike. They're not, we're all the same. We're not that different from each other, are we? There's no temptation that has taken us except that which is common to man. I'm special. I get tempted like nobody else. Nope. No. Nothing happened to you, but that doesn't happen to somebody else, or could, if they were in your position. Put people in the right circumstances. There was a book I mentioned called Ordinary Men, I think it was called. I think that's what it's called. Whatever. I've only heard of it. I haven't read it. But it talks about how men, normal, just, rural police officers, I don't remember if they were rural, but they were like just regular men, were slowly what's the word I want? Acclimatized? That's not a very good word. But, they were slowly turned into mass murder squadrons. Let's put it that way. They became executioners of women and children and whole villages. But they did it slowly. Meaning they were at first they didn't ask them to just mow down a bunch of people, but it was innocent people. But they had to be destroyed for the good of the state and whatever. And they didn't want to, even if they were reluctant to do it, many of them participated because of their friends who were in the force or a part of the, they didn't want to, and there was vomiting and people being sick when they were doing these deeds at first. But eventually they got used to it, and it was just like another job. We just got to kill all the people. And you don't think that could happen to you. But the book is about how these were just ordinary people. They weren't like just these monsters waiting to happen. We're all monsters waiting to happen. Our hearts are all alike. You don't think so. I know so. Certainly about myself. It's like, I know I'm capable of murder. Are you kidding me? Absolutely. I'm capable. I don't want to commit murder, but it's like, I could think of circumstances under which it would be my pleasure to murder someone. It would be more of a form of execution again, but execution is authorized murder. And the thing is, when authority authorizes you to murder people you shouldn't murder, something should go off in your head like, whoa, I shouldn't do this. These are innocent people. But the thing is, it didn't. And that should terrify you. That's what I talk about when I go out and I see people everyone's wearing masks. And it's like months after flattening the curve was supposed to be a thing. And, that long-term use is not healthy. Among many things, you weaken your immune system. And everyone's immune system is weakened as they avoid exposing themselves to small germs and everything. Because you're not just avoiding the big thing everyone's scared of, you're avoiding everything to some degree. Yeah, I try not to. That's one of the things I rejoice in the gardening and stuff, because I understand that it strengthens the immune system. I get out and touch nature and be in contact with things that challenge your body's immune system so it gets stronger. You can't wear for people for like months and months and months wearing these things, avoiding contact. In the short term, yeah, you can stop like a major outbreak. In the long term, you could just you'll do more damage than good. But people will just keep obeying, right into the boxcar, right into the gas chamber, is what they will do. People will obey, who will close the doors, people who obey, who will usher you off the train. You will obey as you march onto the train of your own murder. The degree to which people defer to authority is terrifying. Because let me tell you, your neighbors are scary. As far as in the wrong circumstances, or the right, however you want to characterize it, everyone can be, not everyone. I like to think I know what I'm capable of, and I think by knowing what I'm capable of, and knowing that I'm not entirely a good person, in the face of this, I could know I'm not supposed to do it. I won't tell myself I'm a good person. If I do it, it's probably okay, and he's an authority, and I'm a good person, and what could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? He's an authority, and I'm a good person, and he just told me to do something I shouldn't do. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, so as far as being a man and standing against the evil counsels of men, it's more challenging than you realize. Like I said, I talked about not wearing a mask back in the time of the Memorial Day. And there was like a month in there where I refused, and it's an interesting social experiment. And certainly, like people, I heard whatever. I don't want to get into that. I wanted to do a video about that because I have a lot to say. But I'm just saying, it's like, if they will obey in small things, don't think, as far as small things that are ridiculous or, and also just not to look. The fact that they blindly trust their leaders to make the right decision. I don't. I've been watching and listening and realize and think like they're making all the wrong decisions. And I'm supposed to just go along with it. I can't knowingly go along with that. I can't okay, I'll just go along with it too. I was telling whatever. There's no king saved by the multitude of an host. A mighty man is not delivered by much strength. I'll tell you what. God is that which delivers. And you know what? It doesn't matter. I also saw that when I just read that. I just saw it from the perspective of there's no man's king saved by the multitude of a host. Well, everyone said it was okay. I'm going to use this example. Yeah, I watched this video. I almost downloaded it because the clip was so just to me stunning in a way. I saw the candidate Joe Biden standing in front of a microphone talking about how he recommended a nationwide mandate for people to wear masks outside. And what I found interesting is not just him doing it and then his VP getting up there and cackling and laughing about what great leadership that was. It wasn't, they mistake authoritarianism for leadership. Authoritarianism is not leadership. It is authoritarianism. It's ruling. I'm not interested in a ruler, especially not a doddering old fool. We don't need a doddering old fool. We already got a kind of a not doddering old fool, that, maybe a wise fool. But we don't need a doddering one, I'll tell you that. But they would mandate it. And I thought to myself, why? I know why. In the news report, they even said why. They're like, 80% of the people are in favor of this in some form. I don't know what in some form means. It's terrifying to me to think that 80% of the people want me to have to wear a mask outside, like on my property. Really? At all times outside? They really want to fight, don't they? It's annoying because I really don't. But they think, I've got 80%. 80% of the people are in favor. 80% of the people won't save you. You can have a multitude behind you. I don't care. Everyone agrees. Everyone can go to hell. Everyone can go to hell. In fact, they say they asked Jesus if the way was, if there are many that be saved, and he talked about the narrow way. Maybe 80% of the people can go to hell. I don't know. It's an interesting thought. I have no idea. But I'll tell you this. It doesn't matter how many people you got backing you. It doesn't matter how many people agree with you. If 80% of the people agree to enslave the other 20%, or enslave themselves along with the rest of us, as a self-governing individual in a country that is for the people, by the people, and of the people. I think I put that in the wrong order, whatever. Being the actual government, I say no. And there are certain things for which you cannot majority your way into making it right, because it is our right at that point to fight. If they really want to fight, they'll find out what, I think we have a problem is we have a lot of, I can't help but making this, I think it has a lot to do with women and their fears, and they're not willing, and a lot of them are not willing to really look into things. They're afraid of things. They think, we'll trust the doctor, we'll do what they say. That the obvious course is that we must try to beat this thing, no matter what the consequences. I'm not going to go on with that. I'm not going to talk about this disease, stupid thing. Though I realize it's a current issue, so I don't know. Like I said, I got to do some recording on this because I have several subtopics I want to talk about. God knows if I'll get any time. By the way, this Bible study may be interrupted. I'm expecting my mechanic to come pick up my car, and if the dogs go berserk, I'm going to have to end it quickly and go out and speak with him. I don't know. I would be surprised if he got here before 8. So that still would end the study slightly early. So being strong, having a multitude behind you, will not deliver. God delivers, and that's the message. God looks at men. He sees we all have the same state. We look the same. And also notice, he fashioneth their hearts alike. Our hearts are fashioned by God. The heart is desperately wicked and deceitful above all things. That's an interesting thought, isn't it? And people could say, well, did God give you a wicked heart? No. I mean, he didn't take like a good me and then just put a wicked heart in me. What it was is he created me who happened to be wicked, who happened to have a wicked heart. He could have never created anyone who had a wicked heart. He could have just created only individuals with perfect hearts. And then I never would have existed, because part of who I am is that I was wicked once. You know what I mean? You take away the heart that was mine from birth, then it's not me. And though that's no great loss to the world, to me it is the loss of everything. So I am, rather than critiquing God's creation like so many fools have, I use the word fools advisedly, but I mean, shall the thing being formed. Say to him that forms him, what are you doing? What are you doing, God? What do you know what you're doing when you made me? I know people have said that because they think God, like, I mean, because you could look at it like this. It's like, I watched these guys and they were trying to, because there's been a disturbing trend in music in that artists are winning lawsuits where they sue people for plagiarism in examples where they're only, the songs are vaguely similar or similar in mood, but are not, it's not an infringement of someone's copyright at all. It's just same kind of song or vibe or feel, and that's not good. And so in order to, and there's a lot of other smaller, like they've taken like little parts of songs and said, well, that's a lot like my song. So this tiny little part, because it's like mine, it's, and they've been winning some pretty crazy lawsuits. Right? And that's disturbing in a sense because, sometimes I feel like all music belongs to God. And there were these guys who were using a computer to brute force melodies. Brute force refers to the use of a computer to decipher like a combination or a password. So like, let's say you have a lock, like an old-fashioned spin lock for a school locker. I don't know if they still use these. We had to bring our own lock, or sometimes we got assigned locks with combinations. Yeah, we got assigned a lock. I remember that. It came with a combination. There was a combination to my school locker. I think I still have dreams about not being able to remember it, or not being able to find my locker, or being late to school. I'm always having to. If I ever have a dream where I'm back in school, I'm not there in my underwear. I'm just late. Because that's the story of my life. Anyways, so I'm talking about those little lockers. So imagine a little robot that would just turn it, and a computer attached to a robot that would try different combinations, starting with 000, and 001, 002, 003. And it would just go through every combination possible. And then, eventually getting to 101, 102, 103. And what they do is they have the computer go through and try every single thing. And eventually till they open it, presumably. It's called brute force. It can be a slow way to, break a combination or a password, but it can work. That's why you'll find online a lot of times you can't put if you put your password in too many times, it triggers a lock, and they will send an email. There's, it's like, it's to avoid things like that, where you have a computer that can just keep entering the password over and over again until they get it. Because if they're allowed to do that, they will get it, because there's not an infinite number of passwords. Even using numbers and symbols and capitals and lowercase, it becomes very difficult to break, and that's why they do that. But if you make it simple, like, use something like password for your password, I mean, that's probably the first thing every brute force thing tries. All right, so the point is, brute forcing that, they try to brute force music. Basically and then they want to put all these melodies they got using the computer, billions of them, they put them onto a storage, and the idea is to preserve these so people can use them and not get sued for copyright, because it'll be the first published thing. It's kind of complicated, and it's not sure. No one's sure if what the legal standing is, but the idea is to stop this thing where people are being sued for using little pieces of melodies that are similar to popular songs, but not even really derived from them, because it belongs to God. And so my connection in that is that, what the heck? What is the connection? Because it was like, I remember I got through the whole story and like, what was the connection? Let's have a sip of coffee. Brute forcing a password, a melody. People taking those things. Why is that significant? Why did I bring up that example? Well, it speaks to me because it's part of my life as a musician. So I like that example. It reminds me of something, a principle. But now I've forgotten like how I got into that. That's terrible. He sees our hearts. He considers all our works. Oh, yeah. No, this is actually a good point. Okay. So, and then the idea is like there's all these passwords that are possible, right? Right? It's kind of, human beings are kind of the same. There's all these different possible human beings. The really amazing part is, if you just talk in terms of genetics, even if you have identical genetics, meaning you're twins, you're still a distinct individual human being. So there are things that go beyond genetics which make us separate individuals. But even if this is the part that's impossible for the human mind to truly comprehend. We can talk about it, but you will not truly comprehend it. We can't. It says the Lord has set in our heart eternity, or in the idea of infinity also. We understand the idea of limitless, infinite, right? But we can't really perceive it. There's a certain sense in which our minds cannot we cannot wrap our mind around the infinite. Because obviously, if something's infinite, how could you wrap your mind around it? I mean, you can't surround that which has no ends, right? So that's what I'm saying. It's like, okay, you can't encompass and hold, to encompass like all possible people. Well, people are all the possible people. If it's infinite, I can't compass it with anything. But God himself is infinite. And so he can comprehend infinite things. They like make sense to him that could never make sense to us, in a way that it could never make sense to us. There are people, an infinite number of people who could exist. And God has chosen to make exist a certain number. Some, tens of billions of people have lived. Dozens of billions. I don't know exactly how many. We got like 7 alive today, but like through the past, some other number diminishing back towards, I don't think there have been 100 billion people alive. I think that's way too big a number. They estimate, I think, something like double, like whatever is now, like double going backwards, which is interesting. Like, to think that we've doubled everything that was before us. I don't think that's exactly right, but it's not, it's not in that, I wanted to say the digit range, it's not in the, let's see, 6 figures, 100,000, 9 figure is 100 million, 12 figure. It's not in the 12 figure range, okay? It's in the 11 figure range, number of humans who have ever existed. But the actual number that could exist is actually infinite. I mean, you think about it, like I've said often, my wife and I could have had many more children than we did. Not a ton more. We had 8, right? But we could have slipped in a few more here and there. Sure. We might have had twins. Sure. You hear families where there's 20 people. Usually with those families with 20, there's a lot of twins because it's hard for a woman to bear that many children. I mean, it would be hard on her also. Not just the frequency and the danger and all that, but, in so many ways. But, men, if they had additional wives, or wives additional husbands, okay? Because there's certainly plenty of that. You have different children by different people. I just often you say husbands with additional wives because one man can impregnate 10 women at the same time, whereas a woman can only get pregnant once, one at a time. Maybe twins, but you can't have twins, and they could be by different fathers, as I've heard it said. But what I'm saying is you can't have more than one pregnancy at a time. You can't have like one on your back and one on your shoulder or something like that. That's kind of creepy thing. It's like it's kind of horror show, right? Only one at a time. And men can make many, but you think of all those potential people. From that, God brings about one individual, you. And it's not that, and so he doesn't go about like just, you know, we think too much of our uniqueness and not enough about our sameness. You know what I mean? We are individuals different, but we're all pretty much the same. And when God chooses us, something for which we should be thankful. I'm thankful to be alive. It's good to be alive. It is good to be alive. And I'm thankful for it. Some people aren't. And some people will say, why did God make me so? It's not that he made you so. It's just he made you. You can exist or not exist. If he makes something like you, but a bit different, see, that's not you. He can make something very much like you. He can make someone genetically identical to you that isn't you. Can you imagine that? What if you'd been born on the same day you'd been born, but it just wasn't you? You know what I mean? Like, meaning December 4th, 1973, a kid is born and they call him Paul Strangini, right? And he grows up like I did. In the same family, in my family, literally. Born at the hospital I was born at. Taken home to the home I was taken to. Raised by the mother and father I did. But it's not me. I'm not the conscious person inhabiting that body. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that could be the case. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just why does this consciousness that I experience? I mean, it's the existential question is so like profound. God considers all our works. You know, he chose us. It's not because you're great that he chooses you. It's because he's generous and he chooses some people. And that the most upsetting thing about being chosen is the realization that God does not choose everybody. Especially because often the people he chooses, they're not always conscientious, but some of them are, I've noticed. And they know that they were not chosen for their virtue. They know that they were chosen by a mystery of love and mercy that they can't comprehend. I was chosen, I mean, just to live. I'm not even talking about the election for salvation, though I am also. But I mean, what I'm saying there, I was like, just the baseline. That every human being in their relationship with existence in the world ought to be thankful. And that thanks ought to be turned towards God if they understand who God is. If they don't, they ought to have a general thankfulness like for their opportunity to exist in this world, because if you think about it, it is such a precious opportunity to be alive. Such a privilege to be alive. The privilege of the living. You want to talk, people talk about white privilege and all this stuff, right? But the privilege of life, of the living have privileges that others do not enjoy. And it's funny when they start talking about the differences between us who live. They're not to be compared to the privilege, to the differences between, in terms of privilege and a lack of blessing. You would talk about between those who live and those who do not exist. Between those who have lived and those who will never live. Who will never experience even a moment, even a heartbeat, even, the darkness of the womb before an abortion. They experience nothing. They don't even experience the warmth that is in the womb. They experience nothing. Just the cold blackness of darkness forever. God is good and also to be feared. I mean, from a human perspective, God is awesome, which is not a lot different from saying he's awful. Because that's what full of awe versus awesome, which is characterized by awe? I don't know how you can't say both are true. It's just we have a different connotation of each, right? God isn't awful. Well, the wicked think he is. He's an awful calamity to them. Oh, God exists? Oh, no. Oh, no, things matter. We thought we had free reign in the world to do as we pleased. We thought we could take counsel together. We thought we could take a multitude. We thought we could get 80% people to agree, and then we could throttle the other 20%. If they elect that old skeleton, it's going to be nothing but trouble. Not that it's going to be a cakewalk with the other one, but, well, you know, if I got to be involved in something as awful as a civil war, which I by no means want to have any part with at all, I want to be on the side that controls the military. That's important. Very important. Okay, so there's no king save a multitude of hosts. A mighty man is not delivered by strength. And horse is a vain thing for safety. Neither shall he deliver any by his great strength. Yeah, there's like a lot of scriptures with the horses, like Isaiah 31. I think it's Isaiah 31. It might be 30. It's right in there. It talks about, I think it's 31. But it talks about, you know, there was a time when the Assyrian or the king of Babylon, also Jeremiah uses similar language, where they were going to invade. And God had given certain counsel, right? And it was different in each case a little bit. God had given counsel, and the counsel would stand. But the people said, the rulers, the princes, the leadership said, no, but we will flee upon horses. We will ride upon the swift. We won't be, when the destruction comes, we won't be around. We will be gone. We have horses, we have chariots, we're mobile. We're going to just get out of the way. We'll use the horse to get away. And they think they have safety in their mobility and their ability to get up and move. But sometimes the calamity is so great, you have nowhere to run and hide from it. If God wants to bring calamity, and He's counseled, you know, this is how you deal with the calamity. This is what I want you to do, whatever it happens to be. I want you to hunker down. I want you to go out and prophesy. Whatever it is that God calls us to do. He has counsel that will stand. That is the right thing to do. There are counsels of men which are foolish, which are vain. Men for generations have trusted in horses. Horses are just, you know, men have crossed deserts and continents on the backs of horses. But you know, you live by the horse, you die by the horse. Meaning, you know, if the horse is what carries you across the continent, if your horse dies in the way and you're stranded, you die by the horse. Without a horse, you're dead. And the horse can die. It is a vain thing for safety. You know, I'll put my trust in horses. Oh, look, at bandits just stole all our horses. But no one can steal God from you. Now, there are men who try. There are men who try to steal, you know, they steal my words, every one from his neighbor. Oh, that's not right. Oh, that's not what God says. Oh, that's not the truth. Oh, that's not science. Because the truth belongs to God, ultimately. And ultimately, the things going on right now are not scientific questions. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about pretty soon. Like the idea of, like, should you wear a mask or not? The way they're answering that question is not scientific. It's religious, based on a belief, like what they believe they ought to do. Because the science is more of like I said, there's a diminishing returns. In the short term, you wear a mask. If everyone wears masks during an outbreak, in the short term, you will reduce the spread of the disease, and that can be good. And it can be advisable for a short period of time. But the longer you continue to wear the mask, there's diminishing returns on slowing the spread of the disease. And there are also other factors which come into play that start creating worse health conditions for people. People begin to have weakened immune systems. People generally don't wash their masks as much as they should, so they begin to have bacterial growths in their masks, and maybe they replace. That's something that people could deal with, obviously. But what are they going to do? Pass a law forcing you to wash your mask every day? Well, they need to pass another law forcing you to do this, forcing you to do that. They want to force people to do everything. At some point, people have to be free to decide how much risk they want to assume for themselves. And those who are risk averse, I find it is completely easy to stay away from people. I consider myself a natural social distancer, but I don't think it's entirely good. Human beings are social creatures, and our immune systems need to have contact with the outside world. The reason nursing home people are being killed so much by the disease is because they live in isolation. They already live in a sterile environment. So if you want to see how bad, if you want to know what wearing a mask is going to do to you long term in terms of disease, look no further than the nursing homes. Wearing masks makes you vulnerable over a long period of time. I mean, the longer they have people wearing masks, the more weakened your immune system becomes because you are preventing germs from reaching you. Even small ones, even ones your body could easily handle, your immune system, and would give it a nice workout. Because I'll tell you what, if you don't work out, your body becomes flabby. That's the basic message I wanted to tell. I'll tell it right here. That's the basic message. I need to separate that out. It's like working out. Your body, if you don't work out, your muscles will atrophy and waste away. I've seen it with old people over and over again. They get weak. But then you'll see old people on YouTube. You'll see like the 90-year-old man doing 7 pull-ups with weights and stuff like that, You see these characters, they're in their 80s and 90s, and like they're out there, they're lifting and pulling, and like they look strong, and they are strong. Because you can keep the muscles that move your bones can be made to be strong even when you're old. And it helps lubricate your joints, and it keeps you strong and healthy. It won't keep you from dying necessarily, because God only knows when our time is. But at least while you're waiting for death, the wait will be pleasant. You don't want to end up in a nursing home. And just like that, also your immune system needs to fight disease constantly to stay on its best performing state. And so while for the greater public good for a short period of time it may be wise to wear masks, in the long term, science will dictate that it will be a diminishing return, eventually a net negative, because human beings, our immune systems need exercise. And anything you don't use in your body will weaken. And this is the part that is not being talked about enough, and because it's an extremely dangerous policy that people are embarking on. We're having politicians with half information and politically motivated doctors. They're politically motivated, I think. That's the only reason I can imagine, because I heard the main doctor in the country telling the news people that the governor of New York had done the best job. And that's where most of the people were dead. It's like, okay, obviously he doesn't know what he's talking about. He is a complete, the man should be fired. I think he should lose his job. He's got plenty of money. He's old. He's probably worth millions. Fire him. Fire him. That's what I would say. But it's too sensitive right now. It becomes like, it's all political. We're being held hostage in this sort of weird medical authoritarian tyranny. And I don't wonder that people are starting to snap. I mean, I've seen on the radio people snapping. They think it's funny, but it's like, you know what? All your ignorance about these things. There's so many people are slow thinkers. The multitude, the mob. Anyways. Because they don't take in the whole situation. People don't consider that there's like a whenever you make a decision to do something that radically changes the way humans live their lives, that short term it may accomplish something, but long term, Like, let's say for the sake of war, we commandeer all kinds of industry and stuff to fight a war of where our existence is at stake. And then after the war, you unleash all that. You return things to people. You remove all those restrictions or whatever. If you keep them long term, you're just all slaves. And our fathers did not give us to be slaves, and I certainly will not sell my children into slavery so cheaply. You know what I mean? Just for this, in order to accommodate the stupidity of my leaders, I would send my children into slavery? What the hell is this? What the hell is this? No, I don't think so. A horse is a vain thing for safety. They think, I'll ride off on a horse. Your horse? Neither shall he deliver any by his great strength. I had wanted to, I don't know. The Lord, basically, men trust in things like their technology, their wisdom, but we ought to trust the Lord, right? That is where we receive ultimate security. We are secure because we have God. We trust God for safety. And like I say over and over again, that does not mean we do not do what we have been shown is good and right. Like, we have a duty. I want to talk about this more. I'm going to use the current events here to understand something. And it's good. It's fine. It may date these things, but it's a lesson worth learning. And also it's like I'm saying these things in the midst of it. It's August 14th, 2020. And I've been saying this for a while. I'll continue to say it. We trust God, right? I trust the Lord. And people say, well, what does that mean? Just fold your hands and do nothing? And just wait for God to do everything? And I liken it to when Jesus was on the pinnacle of the temple. Throw yourself down. Because he'll give his angels charge over you. You just toss yourself off the building. You don't have any responsibilities in this at all, because God's going to do this stuff. Trust in the Lord. He's your safety. I believe in God. I trust in him. He'll save me. I'll just throw myself off a building. It's insane, because God created a consistent world in which we can rely upon cause and effect. If we couldn't, we'd lose our minds if you couldn't rely on cause and effect. If they weren't somewhat reliable. Sometimes we don't understand what we see in terms of cause and effect, but the processes of cause and effect are pretty well established and easy to observe. And from the time you're a baby, you're learning this truth about the world we live in. Things happen and there are effects. We've learned, we take what we have learned and we apply it as best we can using wisdom and not faith. And that's what angers me about the things today. Because the decisions being made by politicians are based on faith. Based on things they believe. Not based on science. Not based on considering, we got to weigh in the balance the pros and cons. All they think is like, we need to stop the disease. That's something we believe in. That's a faith statement. There's no scientific thing that says you need to stop the disease. We could just let it burn through our population, kill off all the weak people. It's not, or anything. We let it kill half of us, whatever. There's no scientific reason we don't have to do that. It's a moral question. It's a moral question. And we've decided, okay, we want to save lives. Well, if we're going to get into a moral question where we decide we want to save lives, we have a responsibility to actually think about what we're doing and not just do whatever is politically expedient, whatever the mob thinks is the best thing to do, whatever makes Pete Grandma feel best, to stick a mask on her face or hide in a closet. The reason people in nursing homes are dying is because nobody goes and sees those people. They live in a sterile environment where their immune systems are suppressed. So when you introduce a novel disease that their body has never encountered, and they haven't been practicing fighting off all the little colds because their grandkids never visit them, so they die in droves because they have no human contact. I've mentioned I thought I had coronavirus in March. I sat in my brother's office coughing my brains out working with him. And he didn't even get sick. You know why? Because my dad lives in the same house. And my children, who also contracted probably the same thing, because we all went to the same wrestling tournaments, is where I got this. We all came into the house. They kissed him. They touched him. They didn't slobber all over him or sneeze in his face or anything. But I mean, he got some contact. He gets it all the time. And though my father has numerous pre-existing health conditions, he didn't get sick at all. You know why? It's because he has contact with children all the time. Old people need to have contact with children. Grandparents need to visit their grandchildren all the time, frequently, and give them physical contact so that their immune systems don't become weakened. Now, obviously, when you have an outbreak, you don't want to necessarily spread it around to everybody, especially when it's new and coming from some crazed Chinese lab or from some weird wet market. Who knows which one it came from? Doesn't matter. It's awfully suspicious in either case, don't you think? We have a responsibility to weigh the consequences of our actions, not just to do what seems expedient, what seems politically popular. Everyone wants to wear masks. It's popular to mandate it. Yeah? Well, you know what? Like I said, I'm not going to allow someone to mandate me into long-term weakness and sickness. That's stupid. I don't knowingly do things. I have trouble doing things that I know are wrong or stupid. Especially stupid. Or that don't make sense. I have a big problem just following things, just doing what I'm told to do because I was told to do it. Yeah, I'll be the first one into the mass grave, probably. I have no doubt about that. I'll be at the head of the line. Because, like I say, there's one that's not cooperating. There's one that's not just doing what they're told. He's the ringleader. Whatever. Come get me. I'd like to see you try. I really would. I'd really love to see them try. Behold, the eye of the Lord is upon them that fear him, upon them that hope in his mercy. I hope in the mercy of God. That's not how I think we ought to fight coronavirus. But I trust in the Lord ultimately for everything. And through that, I understand that I have a responsibility. I think because men don't fear God, they will do and say whatever. They will do and say whatever. Because there's no God to hold them accountable. Why do you think politicians lie and stuff to get power? Why do you think people do the things they do? Because there's no fear of God in them. They don't fear any actual consequences. Like if I were to lead the people to do something unhealthy, to damage people long term, because I did not follow the science, and all that means is, God revealed a consistent world to us. If we throw ourselves off buildings, we'll die. So we shouldn't do stupid things like that. We shouldn't do stupid things like wear a diaper over our face all the time for months and months and months and months and months. Especially once it's been revealed that the illness is no more serious. And it is more serious at the beginning because we're unprepared for it and because it's new. But in the long term, it is no more serious than the flu. It's the cold equivalent of a flu. Meaning it's a nasty, nasty, nasty cold. I had one. It was nasty. I've never had a cold with a fever like that for almost 48 hours. And coughing till my lungs. Not till my lungs. Coughing till my ribs hurt. My lungs felt exhausted. You know? But I think I got saturated with it. I think, like I said, being at the tournament, kids are like, shaking hands with all these kids, people breathing on you, spitting on you, people screaming. I mean, it's a perfect place to spread disease. I don't think they'll ever let us wrestle again in Illinois. I'm pretty sure Pritzker won't let us do it. I'm curious to see what happens when all the people who participate in these things, are they going to still continue sitting by? I thought these men were my friends. But we're all quietly obeying right now. I'm not. Like I said, I've been disobedient from the beginning. At least certain aspects. I remember the day the lockdown started, and it was forbidden. This is a confession. The day it started, I brought my children to visit my father and to stay at his house. Because their contact with him is like an inoculation. Let's see. Just the dentist office. Thought it might be my mechanic. To deliver their soul from death, to keep them alive in famine. So it doesn't mean you don't do what you know you should do to stay alive in famine. But as you're preparing for things, you don't live in fear. What will happen to us if there's a famine? We trust in the Lord. We try to be mindful. Doesn't mean you can't starve to death as a Christian, by the way. But it means that his eye is on us who fear. He watches. Remember, there is that altar, okay? There's the altar before God. And this is symbolic. I don't think this is literally the truth, because it would be horrific for God and for the people involved. To have God sitting on his throne, and there's an altar in front of him of people screaming about all their blood and stuff, and about suffering and the death, and all the things that men have suffered at the hands of unbelievers and of those that fear not God. All the Christians who've been martyred and slain and tortured and stuff over time. The blood of all of them that were slain for the word of God, for righteousness' sake. It's under the altar. The souls are there, and they cry out, "How long, O Lord? That's not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth." They cry out. There have been a lot of souls that God did not deliver in the time of their distress. A lot of souls who God gave to the knife, who God gave to the executioner. Souls upon whom his mercy rests. Souls upon whom his salvation is promised. They sit there. The souls cry out because God can never let that rest. Because he promised. He promised to keep them alive in famine, in trouble, from the enemy. Your foot will not slip. Our soul waiteth for the Lord. Notice that says our soul. This is all very much like the altar before the throne in the book of Revelation. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the fifth trumpet, chapter 6. The fifth, when he opens the fifth seal, he sees under the altar the souls of them that are slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. Right? There have been a lot of people who've been promised mercy, and the only mercy they received so far was the mercy of death. Comes to all, because no one, thankfully, the most torture anyone could foist on you is as long as it takes you to die. Which is not forever. It can be long. Men have been suffering long. But not that long, thankfully. There's a limit. We wait for God, our souls, even if they must wait in the grave. I died trusting in the Lord. I died with my hope in the Lord. I died with God as my shield, and the arrow of the enemy pierced my face. you know? So God, he doesn't owe me anything except that he obligated himself. He obligated himself. I don't say, God, it's your obligation to save me in the manner I choose. I didn't want to have an arrow to the face. I thought you were my shield. But instead I took an arrow in the face. But the next moment, my conscience, not conscience, my conscious mind goes black. As the bullet hits my brain. And my brains explode. And everything goes dark. And the next moment I see the Lord. And I'm raised. I'm alive again. And he has not suffered me to perish. That's how it will be experienced. You don't know it now, but and you look and you see all the dead and you say, how can that be? And you say, look in heaven, there's an altar where they're all screaming. They're not screaming, they're just waiting. What's saying, but to God they are screaming. God hears the death of all his saints like a scream in his ear constantly. How long are you going to wait to avenge us? He never forgets. His eyes are upon them that fear him. For our heart shall rejoice in him because we have trusted in his holy name. Let thy mercy, O Lord, be upon us according as we hope in thee. I want God to be merciful to me. I don't want to get a bullet in my head, and no time soon. But I trust that, whatever God has in store for me, or you, ultimately, it's our salvation. We love in the movies when someone gets like a near miss. Like, someone shoots a bullet and they dodge it in slow motion. It's exciting, right? That's from like The Matrix back in the 90s. Whenever, or like they're driving the car and they come to the edge of the cliff and they're on the edge of the cliff. And of course, the most overused trope of all in the movies that always just makes me just want to puke because it's overused and because it's so, I don't know why it makes me want to puke, but only because I guess it's because it's like this. This is how it goes. Maybe the main character or a side character in the final conflict, right? They're it's something, a big explosion, something happened, and there they are. And they're just laying there. And then the people are like, their friends are like, Johnny, are you all right? I'm just saying, I don't know. Is he? And they're like, oh, is he dead? Oh, he's dead. And they start to cry. Oh, I'm so sorry, he's dead. And then they go, and they're alive. They always do this thing, especially Disney movies love to do this, where they make you think one of the characters is dead to try to create some sort of emotional thing at the end. He's dead. No, he's not. He's alive. But they try to manipulate your emotions, right? Through use of that. Because there's no better near miss than nearly dead. But there is a better miss. There is a better than nearly dead. He was dead and he's alive again. That's even better. It's like someone gets their brains blown out and then they come back to life. Well, that's something that's really exciting. As opposed to some guy who's just got knocked unconscious for a second or two and no one bothers to take his pulse. Anybody got a mirror? Is that guy breathing? They never check. They never check for vital signs. They always just assume that someone who isn't moving is dead, which is funny. I'm sorry. I should have listened. And now you're dead and there's nothing you can do. It's like, I get so sick of that in the movies because it's all predictable. I'm like, he's not dead. This is Disney. No important character can die at the end of the movie. They have to die at the beginning of the movie. You know what I mean? Bambi's mom dies at the beginning or at the at the end of the first act or second act, whatever. I don't know. They have to die early. It's okay to set someone up and you like them and then they die and it's like, ooh, it creates conflict for later on in the story. But in the last act, they never have an important character die, even though those make great stories. I mean, in like Disney movies, it's like in I mean the ones for kids. But I always think that there's some great, they say great stories ending with a death, with a wedding or a funeral, and and it's always exciting when it seems to be ending with a wedding, with a funeral, and then it turns into a wedding, because that's how the world is going to end for us. It's going to seem like it's going to end with a funeral, but it's actually going to end with a wedding. Our heart shall rejoice in him because we have trusted in his holy name. We have trusted him. Thy mercy, Lord, according as we hope in thee. I'm not going to make special comment because I've kind of talked about these. I mean, it's sort of implicit. This is the conclusion of the matter, stated in clear terms. We will rejoice because we have trusted in him. For that which he has not given us to control. I trust for things that are beyond my abilities. For things that are beyond what God has given me into my hands to be able to do. I don't trust God that he'll go make breakfast for me. That's silly. We're going to do that for ourselves. I say we're because I'm not going to make breakfast. My wife is. But the point is, I don't trust in it. I don't look for miracles for mundane things. I don't even look for miracles for great things if that great thing is possible with the gifts God has given me. I don't sit down and wait and say well, I need a miracle to get me to the grocery store. I'll just wait here until I teleport, and then when I get the groceries, I'll teleport home by the power of God. No, we don't do that because it's silly. And not because it's silly, but because it is silly, but it is also not the world that God has made for us, that we should expect such things. And the Word of God is not telling you to expect such things. Sometimes people get confused. Expect God to help in our extremity. Expect God to help. But also, he teaches. He teaches our hands to war and our fingers to fight. He teaches the cunning of the artificer. He teaches the wisdom of the wise. If we possess these things, God expects us to use them to the best of our abilities. Okay, we've gone over by almost 15 minutes. Well, I want to finish that psalm. We'll pick it up next week, beginning in Psalm 34, verse 1. We'll see how things go next week. I do expect to be here on Monday. I always like to try to start the week out at least on track and hopefully get in all 5 studies. But like I said, Tuesday, Thursdays are problems, at least temporarily. We'll see how next week goes. It's not a guaranteed problem, but it seems like it's coming up often. So just warn, if I have any sense that it's going to be a problem, though, I won't know till the night before. So if you wake up Tuesday morning and you see it's scheduled for Wednesday, that means it's been canceled, or it's just been moved on to Wednesday. Thanks for joining the study. Look forward to staying with you again next week. Have a nice weekend. And always keep an eye out for new uploads. There we go.
I have chosen the way of the truth. Thy judgments have I laid before me. I have stuck to thy testimonies. O Lord, put me not to shame. I will run the way of thy commandments, when thou shalt enlarge my heart. Teach me, O Lord, the way of thy statutes, and I shall keep it unto the end. Give me understanding, and I shall keep thy law. Yea, I shall observe it with my whole heart.